Welcome to Divisions Mark II. So today we're looking at ornamenting all the intervals of a rising second in our madrigal. So we're still looking at A La Dolce Ombra by Cipriano de Rore. Last time we looked at ornamenting all of the cadences. This time you'll find a link to a new PDF underneath the video, and I've taken out not only all the cadences but all of the rising seconds. That is a whole tone and a semitone, it doesn't matter, just anything that goes up by step. The first thing it would be worth doing is transferring all the cadence ornaments that you put in your previous version into this new one, because that way then we can start to build up the whole thing rather than having a version where we've done the cadences and a version where we've done the seconds. We'll make it cumulative. So if you could just take a second and put your cadential ornaments into this new one, then you'll be ready to add the rising seconds. And what you'll need for that, we're looking at a division treatise by Dalla Casa this time. So we looked at Diego Ortiz previously. This is Dalla Casa's treatise. There's a link to the whole thing in the notes below the video. It's enormous. If you print it all out, you'll be there all week. So you need pages 5 and 6 of the PDF only. And that should give you pages 2, 3, 4 and 5 from Dalla Casa's treatise. I've printed it slightly bigger than it came up on the PDF. It's still tiny. So if you're technologically wizardish, then it would be worth maybe blowing it up a bit. It makes it easier to read. So I am looking then at page 2 of the division treatise. And the first thing you'll spot, or you might not spot, but you need to spot, is that the clef. It's a C1 clef, so the first note is a B. It doesn't really matter what the notes are, in that what we're learning is the pattern or the shape of ornamenting. And you can start it, the principle, the whole point is that you can start it on whatever note you'd like. So at the beginning of this, he happens to be ornamenting a B, a semi-breathed B, up to a semi-breathed C. And he's done it like that. And he gives the same example going from the C up to a D, and the D up to an E. The next one is for coming back the other way. We're not doing those today. Maybe in a future one. So those are the first kind of 3 that you need. It's worth thinking that sometimes if you haven't got time in your the piece that you're choosing, you don't necessarily need to use the whole ornament. So just bear that one in mind. And then you need to look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line down of this same page. And he's just halved the length, so it's a minim. What clef are we in now? That's a G, isn't it? Going up to an A, and he's done A up to B, B up to C, etc. You get the idea. Then he goes through that coming down, rising thirds, coming down, rising fourths, etc. So we'll miss all of that out for now because we are only looking at rising seconds for today. We're doing one step at a time. So now look at the next page then, page 3. About halfway down the page then, he goes back to ornamenting rising seconds. And he's gone back to semi-breathes again. What clef are we in here? That's an A. And he up to a B. This is straight semiquavers. So we've got and the same from the B up to a C. And again, remember, you might only want to use half of that. Here's the B to a C. But if you haven't got time for all that, it would do very nicely, wouldn't it? So just bear in mind the possibility of shortening the examples. Let's turn the page. So I'm on page 4. What clef are we in? That's C2. So this is an A. Straight semiquavers for these divisions. Got to a B. We've got to a C. Get the idea. And then the next one, which is by far the hardest to read and the trickiest to decipher, is at the bottom of page 5. This is a C. There's a ridiculous number of notes in this ornament. I think it's 4 quavers, 3 semis, 2 demi-semiquavers and 4 semiquavers. We're going to count crotchets, which will go 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's what we're ornamenting. 3, 4. 1, 2. Does that make sense? Here we go again. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And starting on the D. You get the idea. And again, you might not get to use the whole of that ornament, but it's got some slightly different shapes in it, so it might be quite useful when we come to look at how we're going to apply them in the madrigal. Okay, so as we did before, why don't we do the cantus part together, and then I'll leave you to do the alto part, and then we'll try it all with the karaoke machine over here. So the first whole host of rising seconds in the cantus part then are at the beginning. Couple of things to think about here. Just because I've highlighted all of the rising seconds, it doesn't necessarily mean that we've got to ornament all of them. That's not necessarily the aim of the game. So I'm wondering in bar 3 about ornamenting the very first rising step between the B and the C. And I'm looking at page 2 of the division treatise, halfway down the page where he's given minims as an example, and I think I'm just going to use that exact one. So that's what I'm going to put in that very first gap, in that very first bar. Then I'm going to leave the next one because we don't need to ornament every single one. Then I'm going to ornament the final D in bar 3 up to the E in bar 4. We've used a fairly simple one in the first example, so why don't we use something slightly more extended for the second one? So how about the ones that are at the very top of page 2? So we have the very first example on the very first page. And that will fit, won't it, inside a minim if we play it quick enough. You've got to do a little bit of maths to work out how much stuff you can fit in each one. But that division will work perfectly well in there. So from the beginning of the cantus part, what we've got so far that works, doesn't it? So let's go on then. My next one is bar 11, the end of bar 11. How about, now there are 2 rising steps in a row here, so we could get ridiculous. We've got D at the end of the bar, E, F, G. Whole host of rising intervals. It's getting a bit much, isn't it? So I've used the example from halfway down the page, and I've used it twice. And then I've used the one from the top of page 2 for the next one. That's enough, isn't it? I mean, that's starting to get way more twiddly than anything that's in the piece. I think it's worth bearing in mind that if you end up playing ornaments that are massively quicker than anything that features in any other part of the piece, you're going to really draw attention to it. Now, of course, you're going to draw attention to the fact that it's ornamented, but if there's the odd quaver in the original piece. I mean, there is movement, isn't there, in the original writing. So if you ornament with quavers, it's not going to stand out quite as much as if you ornament with fistfuls of semiquavers and demi-semiquavers all the way through. So just the aim is not to fit as many notes as you possibly can into as small a space as possible. So does this make sense then from the end of bar 10? And then I've got my cadence division. Let's go on. Bar 15 then, in the cantus part, I've got the same interval twice, B to C. So I'm not going to ornament the first one, but I will ornament the second one. And in the interests of getting used to a couple of ornaments that we can perhaps try and commit to memory and will come out kind of naturally when we play, I'm going to reuse several ones that we've used already. So I'm going to use the one that's halfway down page 2 that we used in the very first instance. So we've had it before, but the more you do it, the more familiar they become. Then I'm not going to do the next one because there's a lot of stuff happening, hopefully, in the alto part that you're going to be filling in. So I'm not going to get in the way there, but I will do the last one of bar 16 into bar 17. How about we use one of the fancier ones? So on page 3 of the divisions, halfway down the page, I'm going to go for the second half of that division. So I'm going again B to C. Is what I'm going to put in there. And I've taken that from the example halfway down page 3 and just used the second half of his division. And again, I am just going to pencil it in. Okay, then, not going to bother with bar 17 because there's a lot happening in the tenor part. Bar 30, I've got an A rising to a B. How about on page 5 of the divisions, where it's got the really long, complicated one with lots of twiddly, fiddly semiquavers, demi-semiquavers. We're not going to fit all of that in, are we? But what if we take the beginning of it and the end of it? So instead of A, B, I'm going to have... That's the first 4 quavers of that ornament, and the last 4... And again, I'm going to write it in. I hope that is making some kind of sense. It's just somehow less easy to transfer, isn't it, from that page. You see why with the Ortiz I took really specific examples, but here you can kind of see just how much information there is on the page and what it is that we're having to extract from. So why don't I get this to play the alto, the tenor and the bass, and I will play through the ornamented version of the cantus part that we've just talked through, and we'll see if it works. You can sit on the outside and hear it and see what you think. So here it comes. So you know what happens next, don't you? That's the cantus part ornamented together. So it's your job to do the altus part. I'll go and put the kettle on. And then when you're done, we'll come back and play both of those ornamented parts together. Are you ready? So this is the bass and the tenor from the magic box, the ornamented alto part from you, and I'll put the cantus in. See you at the end. I don't know if you heard the mysterious ping from over here. It was telling me that the battery is running low. So that would appear to be a good time to stop. So we've done cadences, rising seconds, and I'll dream up another one for next time.